So let me start, right? I want to start by telling you about my current philosophy, right? So I'm a web developer, I'm a software engineer, I'm a whatever you want to call it. And what I want to do, I have years of experience now, but what I want to start doing is like building websites that solve my problems. And I want to build them quickly, I want to build them to a high standard. And when you build a website, there's a lot of stuff that you reuse. So these are things like authentication, pagination, search, emails, things like this, right? And this stuff's used on every single website. So these things I want to get like really down set so I can just take them and use them across the websites. And then for the actual website, specific website I'm working on, I just want to focus on the problem, the value that website can bring. So let's say I'm working on a running website that generates running training schedules, for example, because I'm thinking of doing that. All the stuff that goes with websites, so you're talking like mails, you're talking about search, you're talking about logins, accounts, all these things. I want all that to be ready as soon as possible so then I can focus on that generation of the actual training schedule for the runner and really put the time and effort and allow that to bring the value. So that's kind of my philosophy at the moment, and that's how I want to approach these things. So I've decided on a stack that I'm going to approach this with. So the stack is Laravel, React, and Postgres as a DB. So I'm used to React. I've been a React developer for like 5-6 years now, so I'm very familiar with it. I really like it. I'm productive with it. I would consider myself mainly a front-end developer, at least in my full-time job. So I'm using that on the front end. I think it's great. A lot of people don't like it, but it is very much used in the industry. It has a great community. You can be really productive, really fast. It does everything I need, and it's a solid library. So I'm going to stick with React. Now on the back end, there's like a load of choices. So for example, in the JavaScript world, two of the bigger ones I would say, at least that I've tried, is NestJS and Supabase. And NestJS is good. I like it. I learned a lot. I did the courses the NestJS creators created. Really good courses. I thoroughly recommend it. It's a really nice library, but I decided for a few reasons I didn't really want to go down that route. Probably the biggest reason would be maybe it's a little complex for what I think I need. I mean, you could argue against that, I'm sure, but anyway, I'm not going to go with it. Supabase is cool, but you can do 2 projects and then you have to start paying $25 a month, which some people say, well, that's hardly anything, but I want to build a lot of projects. I also find, what if they change the pricing somewhere down the line? What if they change how many products you get? I mean, I really like it, but I don't want to use it. Then you got stuff like Go with HTMX, which would be really interesting, but for me, the learning curve would be too much, that it would slow me down. And the whole idea here is to build websites quickly. I mean, I've been developing for like 10 years now. I can develop quickly, but I also have a core skill set that I want to utilize. And then also Python brings a lot to the table. There's Flask, other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head. Again, use Python at work. It's great. All these things could definitely do what I would want to, but again, I think the learning curve with Python would be a lot. And also, I don't know of any live framework for the backend in Python that has the same maturity that says Laravel. Anyway, so why did I choose Laravel? I chose it for a number of reasons, but probably a few specific reasons really shone for me. And the main one, I would say, is the guy that created it, Taylor Otwell. I think that's how you say it. He created Laravel. He's still there. I was listening to a podcast on Syntax FM, great podcast, and he was saying he still merges every pull request into the master branch, which I think is amazing. So he's been across this whole time that Laravel's been there. That's a long time. But he's always brought that consistency, and I love that. It hasn't been taken over by some some other company, it hasn't been taken over by some big corporation, and then you got too many ideas. Stuff like NestJS, just to name one. I mean, I used to love NestJS, not anymore. So I really like the philosophy behind Laravel, and I tried it out. There was some things that really I liked when trying it, so I'm gonna stick with that for now. Next, I want to go and talk about my learning curve on Laravel. So I'm not a PHP developer. I started in PHP, the whole build a WordPress site, and then you start getting into themes and all this malarkey. I started like that, but I'm not a PHP developer. It's not what I do in my full-time job. However, when I started working on this, I realized, especially nowadays, when you have AI and ChatGPT, Cursor, which I will get to in a minute, you have all these things to help you. I would say less and less the specific programming language syntax is becoming important. Obviously, you need to be able to read a language. You need to be able to understand what you've just either written or generated, but it's not, you don't have to spend months and months learning a language anymore, especially when you have a background in programming. I mean, if we just look here and just look at the syntax here, it's like route, get, okay, that's a get request to this route, and then, okay, and then there's going to be a callback function that does, okay, it's not rocket science to work out, especially if you understand reading code. That's kind of the reasons I went with Laravel. Also, documentation, really good. So if we go to the documentation, very thorough. It has some lovely starter packs, so you can start it, and the choice I started on gave me React with authentication out of the box. I mean, how great is that? You can just run a command and it gives you it all out of the box. And I'm not going to go into details here because I just want to tell you what I'm doing. There's plenty of stuff out there if you want to learn how to do it. The documentation is a great place to start. And so yeah, it was basically very easy to get up and running, and then very easy to make progress. So the way I approached it was, as well as looking at documentation, I went with Laracasts, and they had this free course, and it was called 30 Days of Laravel, I believe, something like that. Jeffrey Way, 30 days to learn Laravel. So this is what I did. I basically approached this slowly. I went through here. He takes you through everything. He introduces you to the setup of the folder structure. He introduces to Eloquent, how you can do forms. This used Blade. It didn't use React, but it gave you a good idea of how to start working with PHP. And this is a free course. You can try out. Really, really good. Jeffrey Way, I remember when I started developing, he was teaching. So this has been around for a long time. He's a really good teacher. He knows how to teach the content. He knows what is important and at least what isn't important for someone approaching it for a new time. And this course sets you up to really get going. You do need to spend some time. You can't just rely on the course. You do need to spend some time, but that's basically what I used. And I use that along with Cursor. So if you're not aware of what Cursor is an AI code editor. So it's a fork of VS Code. And the guys who did that, they integrated AI and code generation into the editor. I love it. I use it now as my main editor. I did use NeoVim for quite a while after I started with VS Code. I love NeoVim, so I do use Vim Actions, which I highly recommend because it's a much better way to get around the editor, in my opinion. I use that, and it's been so useful when learning Laravel. So maybe I can give you some example. Because what would happen is I would come into a controller, and say I go into the auth controller. This was already there when I generated, right? So I can go to the authenticated session controller, for example, and I can hover over this. And I can just press Command L and I can say, what does this do? And what it will give you an explanation right there And so I don't have to leave the editor. It explains to me, you know, it's part of the Laravel framework authentication system. Here's what it does, authguard web, and it really breaks it down for you. And this really helped me learn, okay, this is what exists. Okay, now I want to create my own controller. And for example, where's a good one? It's a little bit messy, my code, but anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. You know, you have the, okay, why, when you start with Laravel, they have a very specific naming convention. At first I was like, ooh, that's pretty strict, but you soon understand, oh, it's really helpful, because then you can create every controller like that. You can go quickly then between controllers and you go, okay, this is store, this is where I'm going to create something. This is show, okay, this is where I get by ID, great. This is an update, this is destroy. It all uses the same naming convention across these controllers. Super, super nice. I'm a big fan of this now because it just makes it so much easier to jump across code. I utilize Cursor a lot and it really helped me learn. Like, it takes that intimidation away from, like I said, I would consider myself a PHP, not beginner, but pretty novice. If I had to write everything from scratch, it would have taken me a long time. But with Cursor and using the, what model did I use? I was using, ChatGPT 4 now. I wasn't using that one. I was using Claude most of the time, Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So by using that, it really helps you progress and learn, and you learn as you're going, right? So although it does give you a lot of predicted code output, you know, you still need to check it. I would never just like blindly tab my way through, but it does really help you learn, and it takes that, like I would say, intimidation away. So you're not so intimidated when you're trying to learn something as big as Laravel, because it's big. There's a lot to it, right? You have, when you do a boilerplate, you get a lot of different folders already set up. You know, you got your models, you got your controllers, you got your middleware, you got your requests, and then you got traits, services, providers. You got your bootstrap config with all these different configs in there. And then your database, which have like factory functions to quickly generate data. You have your seeders. You know, there's a lot of stuff that you kind of need to learn and understand, and it's not something you're going to learn in a day unless you're a genius, and I'm not a genius. So I would say I spent that 30 days just, you know, bite size. I have a job, I have a family, I can't go spending all day learning something. So I went through that 30-day course, really, really good. Learnt the basics, and then, as Jeffrey kept saying in the course, you have to apply. And that's what I did. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the terminal commands that you have in PHP, in Laravel rather. So now I'm in my terminal. I'm using iTerm with tmux and ZSH. That's what it is, right? Yeah. So I run Postgres locally in a Docker container, because it's super easy to spin up using Docker Compose. Then I have a terminal window for running all the PHP commands. Oh, I didn't tell you, did I? You have to, well, at least I installed this thing called Herd. Basically, it's an app. You download it, you install it, and then it just runs your servers that you need. Great. Like I said, this is an instruction video. HERD, PHP. If you type that into Google, you'll find it. But this is what I have running. So this runs the servers that then enables me to run it locally. So all that. And then, for example, you run this PHP artisan. This is like this is the command line tool that you use locally. And for example, here you can see migrate fresh seed, and this will reseed the database. So super easy. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. You can go like list, and this list, like this gives you all the different commands you can run, and it's brilliant. It's like make a model, make a controller, make a notification, make a queue. It's amazing. There's so much. Like, you can tell a lot of thought has been put into this, and it really enables you to iterate and develop very, very quickly. So that's that. Front end, I'm using PNPM. I changed it from NPM because I love PNPM. So here I can just run, PNPM run dev, and then that runs it for me. Beautiful. I use LazyGit. If you haven't tried LazyGit, I strongly suggest you try it because it is amazing. And then with Laravel, there's certain things going, like you have queues which help queue jobs. Like if you want to send an email, rather than sending the email synchronously, which will take some time. If a user presses a button and you want to send an email at the same time, that will take some time. This queue will enable you to queue stuff, and then the mail will go out, as the queue gets to it. Meilisearch, I want to get to this, Meilisearch, and then some random window here, doing nothing. So also one reason why I really like Laravel is because you can just quickly write some command using the command line tool, and it will just do stuff, and it's great. On the front end, so I'm using React. Like I said, I would probably, if you had to put me into a pigeonhole, I would classify myself as a React developer. I use React every single day at work. Big fan of it. Been using it for years. Still love it. I can be really productive in it. I think it's great. Much better for me than writing pure HTML, pure JavaScript. I know that will get some hate, but that's the way I feel. Love React. Great ecosystem as well. Laravel, they have this thing called Inertia.js. So this confused me. I'm not going to lie. When I first started using it, I was like a little bit confused because it is React, and enables you to write React, but it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because I was trying to do like client-side requests, and I got into some difficulty, right? Because out of the box with the Laravel authentication, it does cookie authentication. And then when you return, let me show you. If I go to a controller, if I go to an actual controller and show you a very simple controller, what should we go to? Let's go to, is this a good example? Yeah, here we go. So I've got this controller, right? And it's a get all notes. Okay, I've attached a few things to it, friends and reminders, but it doesn't matter. What it does is it will render the notes index component on the client with notes as a prop, right? So if we go down to resources and look at our pages, we can go notes index. So it'll render this component, right? And you can see that here, you can see the props being passed down. It's notes. That's awesome, right? Okay, cool. It's like really, okay, quite straightforward. It makes sense. Allows you to pass down different props from the back end. Cool. But then I was like, okay, now I want to do like a little client-side request. I just want to edit a note send a client request to send a put request from client side to the back end, and then get the data back and refresh the client. But you can't do it. It confused me for ages. So what Inertia have is they have this use form, right? Oh, nightmare, mate. It takes you, like, when you're not used to it, it takes you a while to get used to it, right? So it's a very set pattern. You handle your whatever it is, your request, and then you get this. In this example, it's a delete request, right? So you get to delete, you put in the route, and then you can get on success, on error. And basically, as far as I understand it, it's the data is being you send it to the back end, and then the data is sent forward, and Inertia will refresh, rehydrate the client side. But it's like a little bit confusing, to say the least. There's certain situations when you're on a different route. At least it took me a while to work out, because I didn't even know that you could do stuff like back with. So you can do this like back with success, it's, at the end of the day, it's a learning curve, right? So it's not your typical client side requests using something like Tanner query that I'm very much used to. It really took me some time, and I'm still not like 100% comfortable with it. But this is a good thing about trying new things, right? You learn new things. Anyway, it's got a load of stuff: routing, links, redirects, responses. Pretty good documentation. If I was being picky, I would want better, more complex examples, like you're on a friends route and you want to update a note, and so you want to send that request and then back, and without doing a full page refresh. How do you do that? Because it's not clear when you're starting, and they don't have any examples. All their examples are quite simple, which I guess is fine, but anyway, it caused me a headache. Took me a long time to realize, but getting better. So just bear in mind, and there's this new V2 out now, so this has just come out. I'm going to update soon, but just bear in mind, you're going to do a Laravel with React project. You need to learn Inertia, and it takes you a little bit of time to get your head around it, or a lot of time if you're stupid like me. So that's Inertia. Stripe. I've never worked properly with Stripe, so this is the first time I worked with Stripe. Laravel. It's amazing. That's another reason why I took it. They have all these integrations. I want, like, for example, Stripe, search. And all you have to do is just go to the documentation, right? So you go to the documentation and you search. Okay, let's start in Stripe. And they have this Laravel cashier. Okay, how do I do this? So you start at the top, introduction, and it just, it gives you these things that you install. Composer it's like a package manager, same as NPM or Poetry in Python or whatever language you're working in. So you install this, and it really leads you through it. Different traits that like pre-built traits. Like, they know that when most developers, when they're building sites, they want to do the same thing. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you want to do searching, you want to do payment, you want to do pagination, you want to do authentication, login. All these things used over and over again, and Laravel has got you covered. And it's great because you're not going to spend 2 weeks making your own custom payment thing to use Stripe and realize that it's going to be buggy as hell. I mean, this thing has been tried and tested, I hope. And it's not like easy to set up, but you can do it in a few days. It works really nicely. And then I've got to praise Stripe. I mean, Stripe they have this whole test environment on their site. Really nice for testing, so you can really test end to end to see if what you're doing is working. So even though I've never used Stripe before, it only took me, like, let's say 2-3 days to get an implementation up and running and working on my site, which is great. I mean, I'm sure when this goes into production, the site, there's going to be a lot of different details to deal with, but the main point is it's there, it's working. Payment is extracted. It's like Stripe can deal with all the nitty gritty of that stuff, so you don't have to worry about it. And now it's implemented. It's great. And the next thing I would say is the search. I tried a few ones. So for search, and in search, Laravel have something called Scout. So if I go Scout, there we go. So there's these Algolia, Meilisearch, TypeSense. I tried all of them, and I actually went with Meilisearch in the end. I didn't like Algolia because it was like a paid option. So I went with Meilisearch. Well, this was a bit tricky. I mean, it was easy to implement, but then I wanted to have, and I'll show you in a minute, I wanted to have like a global search on my site, and then you need to restrict it by user. So, I want to find a friend on my site, but only search from the friends that are generated or assigned to my user ID. So that doesn't come out of the box. So you need to understand there was some things about tenant tokens, filtering, all these different keys that they have that confused the hell out of me for a while. Anyway, I got there in the end with a little bit of persistence. And can I just take a moment to say that here AI wasn't very helpful, because you would say, okay, I've got this code implemented that it gave me. Okay, it was useful when it gave me the code, the initial boilerplate code to get it working. But when I was problem solving, it was rubbish. And in the end, I had to sort it out myself, which is when it comes to, you got to read the documentation. I mean, as much as it's convenient and sometimes quicker to go to ChatGPT or Cursor or whatever and say, can you implement Stripe for me, please? Or can you implement Meilisearch for me, please? It will do something for you, but I would say 8 times out of 10, it really would be quicker if you just went and read the documentation first. There's no getting around it. I mean, the documentation, even though apparently, you know, all these AIs have read all this documentation, I don't know if they're forgetful or they think certain things aren't important. But for me, when I was having a problem with tenant tokens, for example, I just kept on getting 401 errors, like you have the wrong keys. I would go here and by searching through the documentation, and I have to say, Meilisearch have some really nice examples. They have Laravel specific examples. And so by looking at those examples, reading through documentation, I managed to work it out. If you want me to do a separate video on Meilisearch and how I implemented it, let me know and I can do that. But anyway, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't take me that long to get it up and running. And now I have search. I have search on my site, which is amazing. Okay, I will show you the site in a minute. So just to finish off, I use Mantine as my component library. I love it. I'm using Tailwind as well for like some of the pages, the tweaky pages, but I'm using Mantine. It's a component library. It's version 7. I use it a lot. I'm really familiar with it. Great documentation, great components. I really like the style. If you haven't used it, try it out. Love it. Like, look at this for documents, a bit small. Look at this for examples. It's like, okay, open the examples page, and then it gives you example code. I mean, we're spoiled for choice as developers these days in terms of component libraries. You've got this, you've got MUI, you've got CDN. You've got a whole bunch of different libraries. Really nice. For me, this gives me 95% of what I need, and then that 5% extra I can do with Tailwind. And I don't care if I have 2 different styling options on my site. It gives me what I want, and it's quick. It really enables me to make rapid development. So that's what I use. So let me show you the site. Okay, so this is the site. It's called Cherish, and basically what it is I have a real problem with remembering my friends' birthdays. Oh, but you could use Facebook. I don't want to use Facebook, okay? I have a real problem remembering details about my friends. Well, you're not a very good friend then, are you? Well, I have a lot to remember, okay? So, bugger off. And what else? Oh, kids. Oh my God. I'm in my 40s now, right? So plenty of my friends have kids, and you try and remember all their names, it's nigh on impossible. And also, I don't want to remember all that information in my head. I got better things to do with my brain than remember kids' names I see every once in a while. So I wanted to build something where I could store all this information very easily and very quickly. So I would say it's like a address book, but more useful, and also the data is private. So it's not, I don't want to use, like, God knows what Facebook do with your data. God knows what, I hate Instagram. Does TikTok even do that? Probably not. Apple, I guess you could store it on your Apple device if you really wanted, but it didn't give me everything I wanted. It gave me like some of the things I wanted. Anyway, this is what I built. So, and here, This landing page, for example, AI generated. I mean, why spend your time on stuff like this that can be very easily generated by AI? And it did it like super quickly. And okay, it's not the best landing page I've ever seen in my life, but it's a landing page and it gives you an idea, right? Anyway, get started. You have your registration form. If you're already registered, you can come here. Let me log in here. I log in. So this is the landing page. This is all test data, so you don't have to worry about that. So for example, you have your contacts, you have your occasions coming up, and then you have notes. You can save notes and your messages, right? And for example, I'm on the free plan at the moment, so then I can integrate with Stripe. I can say, look, I've made a pricing page. AI made a pricing page. You can just go, if I press this get premium, it takes me to the test Stripe. How good is that? It's amazing. Anyway, I don't want to do that now. If I go back to pricing, go to the dashboard. So you can see as I'm navigating around, it's very smooth. This is Inertia links. You can search contacts. Oh yeah, the global search. So if I search here, Tyson Flatley, press on him, bam, at Tyson Flatley. Love it. So this is a show, and that was Meilisearch. If you weren't sure about that, that was Meilisearch. And like I said, if you want me to go deeper into that, I can. Just hit me up in the comments. So here, for example, got this Tyson Flatley family member, apparently. You can send WhatsApp messages for him. So like here, and I'm going to be lazy, so use a little bit of AI to generate a message. Hi, Tyson family. That's really good AI, isn't it? This has just generated a message for me, and I can send it. It will send it in WhatsApp. I can copy it or not. I don't really want to do that at the moment, but these sort of things, right? So the idea is this app will help you. It's like, because you're busy in your day-to-day life, it will send you a little notification. Hey, you haven't spoken to such and such for a while. Why don't you send them a message? And you're like, that's a great idea. Thank you very much, app. And then it helps you stay in contact with your friends and find out important information. Here they have other, you say, I remember they had a son, they had a daughter, didn't they? What's the daughter called? Samantha something, yeah, Asom. And then you say, yep, they had a daughter. Great. And then you can add that relationship, and now they've got a daughter. So then when you don't see Tyson for ages and then he invites you around for a barbecue, you're like, and you're speaking with your wife, and you're like, what the hell are their kids called again? Oh yeah, Samantha Asom. Brilliant. Got a calendar here. This is something I built. You can see Ulali. What is that name? Fake data. Got a wedding coming up. And then, all your notes that you may have. Really, and look at this, pagination. Love it. Love it. All out the box. Pagination is like so easy to do. And then your dashboard. So that's the app I built. This is with Laravel on the back end and React on the front end. Last but not least, let's go to what's next. Deployment, Laravel Forge. It's time to deploy, guys. So Laravel are bringing out a Laravel Cloud in the future. They said end of Q4 to 2024. Today is the last day of 2024, and it's not out yet, so they were lying. But this Laravel Forge looks like an interesting option. Next best thing, probably. It's already making life easier for a hell of a lot of applications. So we'll try this. That's what I want to try next is deployment. Because if you're a developer, you will know that building something locally is one thing, deploying is a completely different beast. So I'm going to deploy. I want to get into testing more, because if you have any experience with working with applications, you know that tests will save your skin many, 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 many times over. Laravel, you can implement testing with that. So I want to make sure I have at least the basic test covered. And also I want to use Playwright on the front end to do some end-to-end tests, because that's always useful. And then the fun of getting users and testing it. Because you could build the most beautiful app in the world, but if it's not a good idea, or at least there's not an audience for it, and no one's going to use it, is not really worth pursuing. So hence this kind of build goes into my whole philosophy of build websites that solve my problems quickly so I can deploy them and then I can test them. So that's it. That's why I'm working with Laravel, React, Postgres, the LRP stack. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Talk to you later. Bye.